Hello YouTube and welcome to the nation of free to play. I'm Mr. Mondstadt and today I want to talk about resin and how to make the most out of it in Genshin Impact in 2026. Let's go! Over the last year Genshin changed up a few things. We got a new endgame mode, new quality of life upgrades and a new way of farming artifacts. All of these things did affect the way we players should spend our daily resin in order to be as efficient as possible with it, an important topic especially for F2Ps. Plus, I will also talk about how much resin you actually get if you farm and play efficiently, because spoiler, it is way more than 180 a day. Make sure to stick around till the end to find out how much exactly. Before we start, a quick disclaimer. If your account is very new and you haven't reached adventure rank 45 at least, the following does not really apply to you yet, and I would like to recommend the Genshin Impact Beginner's Guide to you instead. For everyone else though, here's my F2P Resin plan for an entire patch. First of all, you can spend your resin on Mora, Heroes Wits, talent books, weapon materials, overworld bosses, weekly bosses and of course, artifacts. Technically you could also craft weapon enhancement ores with it, but we don't talk about that. If you want to build a new character, let's take Columbina as an example, you basically need all of the above. Her essential materials are official by now, as you can see them on screen. How should you go about it? Well, first of all, one of the biggest quality of life upgrades of 2025 is the fact that you can now farm any domain any day of the week for 1 week after the banner changes. So this daily restriction is not completely gone yet, but we're getting there. This means that every 3 weeks when the limited character banners change, every weapon and talent domain will be available every day of the week. If you have a character in mind that you want to build next, this means that all of your resin during that week should be spent on these domains, or at least all of it until you have enough resources that you need. For Columbina, these books would be Moonlight, and the weapon materials depend on which weapon you want to equip on her. However, instead of getting to farm these mats only 3 days a week, you can now go all in during that week, and that should give you enough to level 90 a weapon and crown some talents. 1 week after a new patch dropped, we will get a new version of Stygian Onslaught, and while the game mode can be frustrating on higher difficulties, it is also a new and more efficient way of farming artifacts. As you probably know by now, you can farm any artifact domain in the game for the first 10 days in Stygian, and once you've spent at least 1200 resin, you can even claim 1 dust of enlightenment. Whether you care for the reroll feather or not, if you ever want to farm artifacts for a character, these 10 days is the time to do so. Whether you only spend your daily resin or want to drop a bunch of fragile resin for your favorite unit, do it in Stygian Onslaught and not in the regular artifact domain. The reason is that you get 1 bonus 5-star artifact for every 120 resin you spend, and the more resin you spend, the more efficient this becomes. I've spent over 5,400 resin on the nod-krai artifact set so far, so if we assume the standard drop rate of 2.14 5-star artifacts from the domain, that would mean 288.9, so let's just say roughly 290 5-star artifacts for 5,400 resin. However, luckily I did spend all of that resin during the Stygian Onslaught outbreaks, which means I did receive a bonus of 45 pieces. 45 extra pieces might not sound too much at first, but if you do the math, that would take me roughly 21 domain runs where I spent 40 resin each, which equals out to be a total of 840 resin. By farming my nod-krai sets exclusively during Stygian Onslaught, I got extra pieces worth 840 resin. To put that into perspective, 840 resin are over 2.5 million more if you spend it on ley lines, and it gets even more efficient the more you farm, so definitely worth adjusting your farming habits if you haven't already. I plan on spending a bunch of my fragiles on the new artifact sets coming in version Luna 4, but I will not spend any resin on the domain, but instead wait 1 week until I can dump them in Stygian Onslaught. Video on what I got will follow. So that means the first 17 days of a patch are already planned out. For the next 4 days, I would recommend farming whatever you need, so overworld bosses or simply ley lines. You could of course still farm weapon or talent domains if you still need them, but by now the daily restrictions are back. However, only for these 4 days, as then the banners change already, which means the next 7 days after that you can repeat that cycle yet again. The second half of a version does not come with a refresh of Stygian Onslaught though, which means for the last 2 weeks of a patch, you can go all out on boss drops, heroes wits and Mora. I have followed this farming pattern for the last couple of months and it works really well for me, as I always have enough boss drops for the characters I want to build next, XP and Mora to level them, and talent books to make them do damage. As for artifacts, it comes down to your luck, but with the opportunity to craft 2 pieces per patch and artifact set, with your elixirs or reroll unfortunate pieces with the feathers, you should be able to get a decent build in a reasonable amount of time and resin. So this is my general approach and I try to visualize it as well, as you can see here. However, I do have one exception to this, and that is weekly bosses. I always spend 90 resin a week to farm 3 trance domains, mostly the more recent ones to be honest. I do that every single week, even during Stygian Onslaught, because I never want to run out of the talent mats, and even though I do have a lot of them, as an F2P, I also hunt for weapon belays, as I'm slowly but surely running out. I just leveled my second R5 prototype Ember, if you know you know, and also run a bunch of the other craftable weapons. Sapwood Blade, Iron Sting, R5 Tidal Shadow, R5 Finale of the Deep, R5 Flute of Especial, R5 nod-krai Sword, R5 Kitane Cross Spear. Long story short, I'm really happy whenever I get a belay from a weekly boss. On top of weekly bosses, I also always look out for leyline overflow events. Hoyo usually gives us 1 week of these per patch, and no matter whether you get double leyline, double talent / weapon drops or double artifacts, I always make sure to spend 60 resin per day on the corresponding drops, as you get double the drops during a double drop event. Makes sense. The daily limit is 60 resin, so that's why I stopped there. But that effectively means 63 resin a day times 7, so over 400 extra resin in a week like that. Definitely a must. So that's basically all about my farming routine, but now to the second question. How much resin do you actually get if you max out the game? In order to answer this question, I need to define what I mean by that first. Of course, resin always regenerates at a fixed rate, as you get 1 resin every 8 minutes. This means you roughly get 180 resin a day, and that is only if you never overcap. Once you reach 200 resin, you won't get any more, so you should never cap on resin ideally. However, while your resin amount does not really increase, the value of materials you can get from the game does depend on how you play and how efficient you farm. So I will do the math on that and then tell you how much resin value you can actually get every single day. Again, I will refer to this as resin value, not resin. And one of the best ways to get more resin value is to do an artifact route. If you only farm artifacts and want to level them, you would either need very high standards or you will soon run out of fodder to level them up. The good news is that you can get artifact XP for free by doing a daily artifact route. On my average daily routes, I collect around 64,000 XP. An average artifact domain run gives you roughly 29,000 XP for 40 resin, which means, if you do the math, the route will give you fodder that would take you 88 resin to get otherwise. And if you don't need fodder, you can destroy the artifacts for Mora instead. Either way, these routes give you roughly 80 resin value every single day. So if you feel like you need more resin, this is a strong recommendation for you. So we have 180 resin plus 80 resin value from the fodder route. But that's not all. If we do farm efficiently and make use of a double drop event, on average 1 per patch, we get 400 extra resin value per patch. Now, what about the Stygian Onslaught artifact bonus? Let's assume we only use our daily resin during the leyline outbreak, so no fragiles. which would mean 180 resin for 10 days, ergo 1800 resin. If we always claim with 40 resin, that is 45 runs. One domain run gives us 2.145 star artifacts on average, so 96.35 star artifacts during these 10 days. And with a bonus from Stygian, we get an extra artifact for every 120 resin we spend though. So 1800 divided by 120 is 15. So 15 extra artifacts. 15 divided by 2.14 is 7, times 40 resin makes 280 extra resin value for farming artifacts in Stygian Onslaught. Plus the Battle Pass gives us 5 fragiles per patch, so another 300. Let's not include the books and more the Battle Pass gives for the sake of simplification, and have a look at the teapot. You can buy 1 transient resin, 20 heroes woods and 120k Mora every week from the teapot currency, which is what I choose to do. The transient is 60 resin per week, 20 heroes woods are 400,000 XP. 1 ley line gives 122,500 XP per 20 resin on average, so the teapot gives 65 resin value, plus 40 resin value from the leftover Mora. So let's summarize the nerd out. A patch is 42 days. 180 resin a day times 42 is 7,560 resin from the game. Now let's add the artifact route. 80 times 42 is 3,360 resin value. Let's add the leyline overflow, so 400 resin value. Now the 280 resin value from Stygian artifact bonus, 5 fragiles, so 300 resin from the battle pass, and the teapot resin, so 60 plus 65 plus 40 per week is 165 times 6 for 6 weeks equals 990 resin value. So to sum it all up, 7,560 plus 3,360 plus 400 plus 280 plus 300 plus 990 is 12,890 resin value per patch, divided by 42 is 306.9 resin every single day. Compared to the 180 resin you get from the game, that is an increase of 42%. I know, I nerded out a bit towards the end, but that is actually a huge deal, especially for F2Ps. And this is why using your resin in the right and efficient way is so important if you want to build a strong Genshin account. As I said, I have been following this pattern for quite a long time now, and I'm pretty happy with my account. I have some strong units and can clear any form of endgame other than Dire consistently. If you want to have a detailed look at that, check out my recent account review video. So yeah, after all this yapping and calculating, I think it's time for me to go touch some grass. But if you found this video interesting or helpful, please leave a like and consider subscribing to my channel, as it really helps me in creating more F2P content. Also, let me know your farming routines in the comments down below. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!